The phone call came at midnight. The prison guard listened and his face went white. The voice on the line was shaky and quiet. It said only 3 words. "He's still talking." That short phrase was enough to start a panic. The guard ran down the stone halls. He woke other guards. He checked the cell block where Charles Manson sat in prison. He checked the visitor logs. He checked the mail. He checked every camera he could. Everything looked normal on the screens. Manson was sitting in his small, locked cell. He had been there for many years. His hair was thin. His face had deep lines. But his eyes were sharp. He always watched people carefully. That night, though, something else was happening outside the walls. A young woman, someone with a name the guards did not know well, was standing under a street lamp near the prison gate. Her hair was tied back. Her hands were trembling. She had a small bag with papers inside. Her face looked like someone who believed a story she had been told for a long time. She had driven a long way to be there. Earlier that day she had read a letter. The letter was short. It said, "Come. Bring friends. We will free him. He needs you." The woman had no proof the letter came from Charles Manson. But she had read other things. She had watched old films about the family. She had met people in a chat group on the internet who wrote about Manson as if he were a leader. They shared songs, old photos, and strange sayings. Some of those people said Manson still had power. Some said he spoke to his followers using secret codes. The woman believed them. The guard at the gate saw her. He asked for ID. She fumbled with a paper. She said she had permission to be there as a visitor. The guard checked the log. There was no permission for this woman to visit. He told her she could not enter. She looked at him and smiled as if she had expected this. Then she whispered, "He's waiting." Inside the prison, cameras blinked. The monitors hummed. The man in cell 7B, Charles Manson, saw the light from the guard's flashlight sweep across his door. He did not move. He sat very still, like a rock that had been in the same place for a long time. He often sat like that. People called him strange. People called him dangerous. People called him a leader. He had followers who kept the memory of him alive. That night the memory found a young person who wanted to act. The guard at the gate radioed for backup. Other guards arrived. They took the woman's bag and checked it. Inside the pocket they found handwritten notes. The notes were full of short lines, repeated phrases, and a name. The name was Charles Manson. The guard opened the bag carefully. He found a small cassette tape and a folded piece of paper. The tape's label said only one word, "Listen." The paper had a phrase written over and over. The guard called his sergeant. The sergeant read the paper. He frowned. "Looks like brainwashing," the sergeant said, quietly. "Or a plan." They took the woman into a small room. She sat on a chair and did not cry. She only stared at the wall and said nothing. When she did speak, her voice was small and clear. "He told me to come," she said. "He said to bring people, but I came alone because I was afraid. He said he would tell us how to change things. He said he needed help." The sergeant wrote everything down. He sealed the tape in a bag. He called the prison psychologist. He called the warden. He told them that someone outside was trying to follow messages from Manson. The warden did not like surprises. He had seen followers try to do strange things before. He knew Manson's name could make people act in ways they would not otherwise act. The warden wanted proof. He wanted to know if Manson was still speaking to people, and how. They had to check Manson's mail, but the mail was already checked by other officers. They had to check the visitor records, but this woman was not listed. They had to listen to the taped phone calls, but those were monitored and recorded in a secure room. The warden ordered every recorded call and every visitor tape to be pulled. He ordered a search of any messages that might have come through lawyers, spiritual advisors, or even coded signals. He ordered everything brought to him. As the night moved toward morning, the guard in the small room held the woman's bag. The sergeant checked the cassette tape. He put it on a player and pressed play. A voice came out of the little speaker. It was thin and hard to hear. The talking was slow. At first the words were not clear. Then one sentence came through, like a whisper from far away. "Love is power. Power is action." After that, the tape repeated a small song that used words Manson had once said in interviews long ago. The sergeant stopped the tape. "This is old," he muttered. "Likely a copy of something out there. Maybe from a movie, maybe from an old interview. But why is this in her bag?" The woman would not explain properly. She kept saying, "He told me to come. He told me to listen." That was not enough. The warden wanted more. He wanted to know who was sending messages. He wanted to stop any plan before it began. He called the FBI. The FBI agents came in with a serious look. They took the tape and the paper. They asked the woman about the people she had talked to online. She gave IP addresses and chat names. The agents worked through the night, tracing the messages. They found a small network of people, some young, some old, who liked to talk about Manson. They shared old songs, old drawings, and old sayings. They were not big or many. But some of them were always ready to act. Some had criminal records. The FBI put the names into a file and moved slowly. They did not want to start a fire by shouting. They wanted to put a lid on the pot before the steam could make a blast. Back inside the prison, Manson watched the guards watch him. He knew how to make people look. He had done it for years. He had been alive in the news for decades. He used his voice to move people once. Now his voice was smaller, recorded in old tapes and in letters. But words have a long life. They travel in a chain. They can cross years and find hungry people at the end. The warden walked past Manson's cell several times that night. He watched how closely the guards watched. He worried about the woman at the gate. He worried about the tape. He worried about what followers on the outside might do. By dawn, the situation had not ended. The woman was taken away. She had no knife, no weapon. She had nothing but papers and a tape. But she had also carried a plan in her head. She had believed that by arriving she could start something. Even if she left the gate and never returned, her small act of belief had created a ripple. That afternoon, in a town 3 hours away, a different follower read the woman's post on an online forum. The man, middle-aged, quiet, with anger tucked deep inside, saw the same words, the same old song, and the same call to action. He was a former prisoner himself. He had once been part of a small group that followed Manson's ways. He had been arrested and he had time to think. Now he had time again. He drove to a storage locker and took out a black backpack. Inside were maps, a small crowbar, and an old gas mask. He told no one. He drove in the night toward the prison. He kept his headlights low. He took back roads. He told himself he was only going to speak to the prisoner. He told himself he was only going to listen. He told stories in his head that made him brave. When he reached the highway near the prison, the sun was low and the sky had pink edges. He parked a mile away and walked. He passed empty shopping lots. He hid in shadows. He reached a small hill that looked over a service road. He could see the prison lights in the distance. He could see fences and gates and a sign that said prison property, no trespassing. He kept walking. A security camera on a pole picked up a small dot moving near the fence. It was hard to see, but the camera recorded the path. The guards on duty noticed the moving dot. They walked to the towers and turned the spotlights. The spotlights were bright and loud in the night. They found the man, crouched behind a low bush, trying to stay small. They called out to him. He did not move. He had been ready for this. He had time to think. He had made a plan. By then, inside the prison, a counselor had come to see Manson. She asked him about his letters. She asked him about his tapes. She told him that someone had been at the gate that morning. She asked if he had anything to say to stop people on the outside. She believed words could calm the things that were not right. Manson looked at her and said nothing for a long time. The quiet felt like a game she did not understand. Outside, the man behind the bush heard voices. He heard trucks and other people. He heard a voice asking his name. He held his breath. He thought of the letters. He thought of the song. He thought of the woman at the gate. He thought of Manson's smile in old photos. He thought of the freedom he had once felt under different skies. He stood slowly. He walked toward the fence. He did not try to climb. He wanted to speak. He wanted to be seen. He wanted to tell someone, anyone, that he had not forgotten and that he still believed. A guard grabbed him and placed handcuffs on his wrists. The man did not fight much. He smiled like someone who had given up but still wanted to matter. He said, "Tell him I came." When the guard asked whom he meant, the man blinked and whispered, "Charles." They took him in. They questioned him. He told them of a small group online that met at night. He named people who had said strange things. He told them about a map with a single star by the prison gate. He told them about a dream for a rescue. The FBI had extra evidence now. They moved faster. They called the hosts of the chat rooms and asked for logs. They followed IP addresses. They watched how messages moved from one person to another. They found a pattern, short phrases, repeated sounds, a few songs. Those things had become a way to call people together. They were like a rope that some could find and then pull. The warden read the reports with a heavy hand. He knew this was dangerous. He knew Manson's name could awaken people who should have stayed asleep. He knew what could happen when a leader's words reached the heart of the wrong listener. He met with the FBI and together they set a plan. They would watch the sites. They would watch the people. They would watch the roads. They would not let anything happen. Time passed. The heat of the day turned the prison walls brown. The woman at the gate was still in custody. The middle-aged man sat in a small room and was watched. No rescue happened. For 3 weeks, nothing more came to the warden's desk. The world outside forgot the noise. Then, one late night, a truck slowed and pulled into a side service road. 2 men in the back wore dark clothes. They carried tools. One of them had a small radio strapped to his chest. The other kept looking at his phone. The driver shut off the engine and the 3 men climbed out. They made a quiet move toward the fence. A spotlight on a tower passed over them, like the blink of a great eye. They waited until the light moved on. They had practiced watching the light. They had a plan. Somewhere inside the prison, a young guard was dozing off. He had been up many hours. His head drooped. He smelled old coffee. He did not realize someone was at the fence until a noise woke him. He turned and saw a small flash of movement. He reached for his radio. The radio did not work. At the fence, the 3 men had a rope ladder. They had bolt cutters. They began to climb. The first man went up, slow and careful. He reached the top and looked over. To his horror, he saw bright lights, guards, and dogs barking. He signaled to the rest. The second man froze. The third man panicked. On the tower, a guard shouted. People ran. The tower light swung fast. Dogs barked. The 3 men dropped back to the ground. They ran toward their truck. Alarms began wailing louder. The truck sped away into the night. On the radio the guard said they had caught footprints, a rope, and a short note. The note read only one sentence. Try harder. The next day the warden called a meeting. He showed the photos of the men. He told the staff that a real attempt had been made. He told them the men had been prepared and serious. He said the FBI had connections and had been tracking the group, but he had to ask, how close had they been? How much had the letters made people act? Inside his small cell, Charles Manson sat on his bed and watched the tiny square of sky above the prison wall. He did not speak. He did not need to. He had done what was dangerous for many long years. He had put ideas into people's heads that sometimes grew into action. Now even when he was behind steel and stone, those ideas nudged the lonely, the angry, and the faithful. They nudged them out of their homes and into the night. And that night the warden read the last line from the man caught at the fence. It read, try harder. The warden felt a shadow over him. He looked at the camera monitors. He moved the lenses to sweep the yard. He felt a small cold drop of fear. Because one message had reached the person who could not forget. And the person who kept sending instructions from a tiny cell was only one of many who could shape others from afar. The scene froze there. At the gate, on the screens, and inside the small cell, many small pieces moved like a clock. The man with the rope had run away. The woman at the gate had been arrested. The middle-aged man had been taken to a room and questioned. The FBI had a file and a plan. But the idea had already jumped. And somewhere, in a quiet house or a hidden chat room, a single person typed 3 words and pressed send. Try harder, now. The story stops there for a moment, on a line that could become a storm.